It's September 15th, 2022. I had an appointment today um, in this section um, in a place in Nassau County, Long Island, that refers to itself as an oncology and diagnostic center. Um, I went for DVT sonogram looking for deep vein thrombosis, um, just as a precautionary measure and a rule out, whatever that was. Um, and preliminary, he said it was all right. But now, I had mentioned, I think last week or the week before, that when I went by the Americana, now that has two interesting names in it. Um, all the more interesting now for me, being that there's the word Eric and the word Anna in Americana at the AM section of Man has set in my local area. There was a series of flags that were not American. They were not United States of America representatives. They were outside, foreign country, foreign state, foreign nation. I don't know how to pronounce that, but the patterns on what was waving on the poles all at the same level were frighteningly apparent for I don't know how many years. Certainly for a few years that I've been driving by, not knowing like where, who takes care of that level of stuff. Why are they all at the exact same height? Isn't there some requirement where the United States of America flag is supposed to fly higher than all of the contingents in some kind of primary and then contingent effort? If it's about, and it's in a very well-to-do, which I can't shop in because I don't have the money for it, but in a very well-to-do set of stores. So they now, however, have changed over to all one unison flag. They took out the differentials, so now it's just one primary flag is what it looks like um, in this particular shopping center. So with that in mind, I drove to the CHS, which is what they abbreviate, the Catholic Health Systems, which has a very specific symbol, very specific color system to it, but they call it Catholic Health. And when I walk in, there is a man dressed as some part of the Catholic system for which I do not have the correct by, like, if without a dedication I would not know how to label the I don't even know the correct, is it costume, the correct vestige, the I'm not quite sure what the word is. Even people don't speak of these things where I in my daily whatever, um but I see what the man looks like, um and it looks to me like everything Catholic I've ever seen, with the priest representing the Caesars of history or some ancestry that's built forward in seating, gardening, and the rectory. So that looked like it was correct for what the image of Catholic is in this area. Humans use this word that says separation of church and state, and I'm trying to logically look around with the information, the small information that's been provided in there's a deep period of mourning somewhere else, which I'm actually um, looking upon as an aid to a learning opportunity, like departing wisdom, which I greatly appreciate, and things that are not normally spoken about here. Um, and there was talks of um, something about the heart. Now, the Saint Francis, now I know I've heard there's the Church of England, and then there's the Catholics. I know that there was some fight in Belfast. I don't know what over. I just know that there was a huge separation, even though they were all white. One was on one side of the tracks, one was on the other side of the tracks. It's all I know. There's no carry forward, there's no anger, because I come from this weird mixed hybrid scenario, and it's not double Irish, so that's even more whatever. And I'm not getting into it. In my peer group, there's a lot more issues going on. So I go into this oncology center, which is a cancer center. That's a fancy word for cancer. And on the wall, uh, on on the wall is some words and then some flags, flags, and I'm like, all different patterns, and then there's words next to the pattern. Now I go over to examine it, and I'm like, no, that's interesting. And some of the word pattern matchups don't necessarily match what I've learned through television only, and some Google lookup. On this particular posting in this St. Francis CHS observatory or institution, I looked at it, and the word patterns associated with the color flag pattern is interestingly offset. And the flag that I'm used to that looks like this has two, not one, but two. It has English, and then it has an American reference on this particular acknowledgement. Just below this wall announcement, it has another piece that said, Mysteries of the Heart, some researcher trying to unlock whatever. And I'm like, no, that's interesting. Because I'm in something like St. Francis they don't associate themselves, they call themselves the Heart Center. The Long Islanders, or at least I always thought, it was told to me that the St. Francis hospital system, their heart care, which I was like, all right, so it's cardiology. But it turns out that's not necessarily the case. They have other whatever purpose. And this is all stuff I'm learning as I'm going with my own health, whatever, trying to rebalance back out. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And then I'm thinking, now this is CHS. On Sunday, I was in a place called that announces itself as IHS. That's the institution of the church. This other facility I was just in is that part of state? It gets confusing. This is the stuff that I was ill prepared for, but it seems to be really important, especially having children, and especially knowing that my visual whatever And my look has a history of being hung in a great hall. And I don't know if people have certain expectation, but it frightens me if, in the sense of, I have no idea, like, where do I stand? What do I, like, who do I report to? Like, how does that work? So that's interesting. Then I'm thinking about, all right, so I've been in a Catholic church before. I've been in a Catholic school before. One of the Catholic schools looked Catholic, like their children that attended that institution in the year that I went, same year that of children that I went to Eagle Dock area in Lloyd Harbor with, they looked, to me at the time I was going to Episcopalian, so for me that's just what it looked like. But then this crossover, I went to the Catholic institution and they looked Catholic to me. That's how they presented themselves. They also look like a pope, like the pope that's been, and all the popes that were chosen that I've been able to see over a life frame and before life frame I got here. So that's congruently, simplistically, one set of facts and acknowledgement for which the humans socially organize, and I can see. Now, that was in a learning institution. Now, I've been to just Sunday Mass in Catholic, and I see a lot of state issues inside the congregation, and it gets confusing. Is that allowable? Is that not? Where does that line really? And then I went to a second Catholic institution inside the city, and they did not look Catholic. It was on a street in Astor's territory called Crescent, but it was being organized as a St. John, but it looked more St. John's Island of St. John's in some Caribbean version of Catholic, which that's not what the Pope looks like, so now that gets confusing. And I've been in the church where they just let anybody file in and learn the church lessons and the gospel of the week to those that actively participate in a manner for which Homeland Security is a concern, and they have families and they like to live peacefully, and there's some things that are being encroached upon, and this world is changing, and we don't have answers as to why or where the benefit has been. So that's another thing. Then I've gone to Episcopalian church in Queens, and now the humans have this piece of their history in this area of New York. They have this march on Washington in some civil uprising movement of, I don't know where they arrived from, but they don't look like what was here or is here, and so then this poses a whole nother set of questions that I don't know who to pose them to. And they had, their representative was a Martin Luther King Jr. He died. Somebody killed him. They weren't happy with whatever his message was. However, if that's the face of the Lutheran Church, why is that Lutheran representative in the Church of England's house saying it's in charge of the diocese? That makes no sense to me, because that's what happened in Queens. And where is that? Isn't that an offense of some sort? How do you have a Lutheran in the King's system saying that they're in charge It's a Lutheran. It stops at Martin Luther for church purposes. The beginning of Lutheranism was Martin Luther. That's it. There was no mention of King, no mention of Junior. They happen to have some publicity, whatever, and it made a real echo through the lands of the children still seem to know who that person kind of sort of but not really looks like. That made an impression. But now if that's the representative for the Lutheran Church in the north, because I know the south goes by whatever they go by, in the northern region, why are they not gathering in the Lutheran to keep the internal system in neat and tidy order and to receive the message from Christ, the Lord, and God, and the houses of worship and the house of service? Why are they not following those really simple guidelines? That gets confusing. If they have a separate house of worship, which is Lutheranism, with the past historical reference and figure, why are they ever showing up in the Episcopalian system with a binder saying they're in charge of archdiocese for the area? That's for me, like, if I'm talking ref and coach's corner with like if I had earmuffs on and like I don't know who to direct it to, but there's some symbolic gestures that are not quite adding up, I've picked up on from my peer group. And it's concerning. So I've been into several of the Episcopalian churches looking for the correct pastor that I was comfortable with, which I found one. But in my travels, I've seen some crossover issues. Today I found that I put it up on my Facebook, so I have a reference of what I saw. And again, like, I don't know, like, speaking plain English, like, what's business office related and what's in homeland security related, like interior homeland security related, for a compartmentalization and departmentalization of, there seems to be a lot of offs. If I'm talking like coach's corner, there's some offsides things going on. Like they're running with the ball that belongs technically to someone else, or out of bounds, or they're not following whatever specific field where, I'm starting to see these trends and patterns, and it's frightening. Now, I turned on the television today, and then of course it goes back to when I was a kid. It's like that old adage of, so if everybody's off to war and battle at something else, or somebody's off to like try to go join the circus at the business office, and now all of a sudden no longer has my best interests at heart, who's minding the store? I wasn't given the option of joining the circus. That was not offered to me, for whatever that means. So I don't know why I was kept out of the circus, but I was. And I don't quite understand why the last 4 decades have disheveled the way that they have. There's also on the television today, there was a thing about now the Texas governor's Abbott sending to New York busloads of unwanted new arrivals. Nobody's asking my opinion. I feel we're over capacity and we haven't handled what we already have to deal with, and yet there's more arriving, more and more and more. So that's a problem. Today, I see that to shift blame from Texas, they've shifted it to Florida. Florida's sending to Martha's Vineyard two airplane fulls of unwanted, unexpected, whatever. And now, like, I don't, is this like the backdrop to like the people who have been making decisions for the rest of us that, and put us in danger with all of this stuff going on throughout the years? I mean, before my peer group got to an age where they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, what are you trying to do? This looks like mutiny. This looks like seditious behavior. There's very unclean lines. There's like no logic being used anywhere. Like, how do you even, like, as a homeowners association, like, if I'm in charge of homeowners association to the Vi or the Lilibet elsewhere, the little house, I'm not part of the circus. They didn't involve me. They didn't pay for my whatever. I didn't even, I got like the 120 square foot room that I'm trying to not have, like, that. I mean, trying to sleep at night, but I mean, and looking around going, what, what on God's green earth happened here? So then I looked, I go from the C to BS this morning, which only mentions DeSantis in Florida, upsetting St. Andrews. I'm like, again, it's like big signs here on what's going on. It's like changing of the guards. Like, what is, I mean, it's a period of mourning and then it's, I don't know. I walked on the street last night, and yesterday was the day where it was like a caramelized sugar color just randomly came up, did this, looked really nervous while doing it, and was like spinning around like in, like, didn't know which side of the street to go on, but had his fingers up like this, and then walked away. And I just kept on my route of whatever I do in when I'm out in my whatever. So now that was interesting because I'm like, and then they're mentioning that it's a Sula. I mean, they say it's Venezuela, but Sula is the last four letters. So I don't know what that's all about. In an IHOP, like, but tending to the store at home, and where's the shopkeep? I mean, homeowners association, I don't even know who to associate with. I've gone to several of the churches. They say they're Episcopalian, but the some of the activities in the doors does not look congruent with what perhaps at one time worked efficiently. But again, being in a major metropolitan or right outside, I mean, again, my area is labeled fallout shelter. Don't know why. It was like that when I arrived. And I've only seen it displayed in one other place like that I've been able to find in just my daily walkabouts, and coming upon it quite by accident. I don't even have access to a league, a legion, a club, nothing. They showed Eli Manning, or no, I don't know if it was Eli Manning. It's one of the triplets the other day. I'm like, again, without their labels and without numbers, and I don't even know their numbers to labels. I only know Brady because he's got my birthday. But I mean, and if he doesn't have the number on his thing, I wouldn't be able to spot him in a crowd, that's for sure. Like, that's how frighteningly Waldorf this is, in there's a purpose for it. It's just I'm 4 decades into like trying to abide by that purpose, but missing the homeowners association and some bylaws representatives. It is a really frightening time as a female by myself. Everybody's like, you empowered. No, I would have had power if it had gone a different way. This is so not how I was built into the solar system or the celestial body, to have the special child by myself. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. That's why there's a cover story about the Virgin Mary. Uh-huh. Because virtue is not on the table for discussion of how Alexander arrived, and it was an immaculate conception in the story. So now let me go get the televised version of what's going on at Martha's Vineyard, New York. And there's something else. I don't even know what a sanctuary city is. I don't know how old on the books that was, and for which agreed upon between New Amsterdam and Manhattan, those two, whatever. And I think brigadiers were tan, but I'm not quite sure that that's even right anymore. The color schematic of costume and pageantry, where's the book? I mean, like, so let me pause this and go get that. So CBS This Morning, episode 184 on Thursday, September 15th, 2022, they prioritized this set of circumstances as if it only was happening in one area, but it actually is happening in multiple areas, according to Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
We want to tell you about an escalation in the political fight over immigration. Dozens of apparent migrants landed by charter flight on a rocky island in the Atlantic, Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. This was yesterday afternoon. They arrived as part of what Governor Ron DeSantis calls a relocation program. Many did not know where they were going, and local officials on the island were not given any advance notice of the flight's arrival. Nick Giovanni of our Boston station WBZ is in Woods Hole, that's just across the water from Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. Nick, good morning.
Tony, good morning to you. This is one of the ferry terminals here on Cape Cod that takes passengers to Martha's Vineyard, and it is there this morning where those migrants are waking up in at least 2 shelters that we know of following an island-wide response to their arrival. Volunteers on Martha's Vineyard found themselves scrambling to find shelter, food, water, and other services to accommodate the unforeseen arrival of 50 migrants, including the elderly and children, flown there as part of a relocation plan originated by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Martha's Vineyard Community Services had 50 people sort of literally walk up to their front door.
Witnesses say the group wandered some 3 miles from the airport into Edgartown. Once in town, the migrants were met by volunteers who brought them to a high school where they were fed and later transported by school bus to a church to stay for the night. Authorities sent out urgent pleas on social media asking for volunteers to help with an urgent humanitarian situation. Barbara Rush worked into the night helping the families at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church.
From what we found out by talking to the people, they're originally from Venezuela. They were flown here. We're not sure.
I mean, again, is this a Sula? Considering it's St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, and it's got the markings of, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. I don't know if this is some marginalized issue carry forward between Where's the Beef and the patty being about this big and the bun being about that big. And then there's the MLS of the soccer leagues. They got some Ted Lasso show right now, and I can't watch it because it's on Hulu and I don't have that streaming service, but I hear it's all the rage with the kids. It's something trendy. It's winning all sorts of awards. So I know they're doing something. And then there's the but like this is like big circus fight, it feels like. And the only people getting punished are us at the I didn't like failure to launch. Like I didn't get to marriage. I didn't get to being able to even survive under this system that seems like it's crumbling and it's like self-defecating. It's taking on issues from other places that we know nothing about and introducing it in some really horrible way. And then I look at who's got the voices. Now all of a sudden I see like Abbott Elementary having turned totally dark humor. And I'm like, this isn't even sick humor. This is dark humor. Like, I'm dry humor. Like, this is not circus funny. This is surface level. Like, there's some real serious violations. And I don't even know how not to get myself in trouble or involved, but to get involved enough to save myself and my children. I'm like, all hands on deck. Hello? Where?
What plane brought them here, or how they got on a plane to here.
Volunteers said they were told by some of the migrants they did not know where they were, or were told they would be given housing and jobs. A statement from a DeSantis spokesperson read in part Massachusetts, New York, and California.
And the first set of problems, when he got into the O2 Academy of whatever NYPD does, he started with this saying with me, because I really didn't like talking to him, and I really had nothing to say to him, and I try to avoid him like the plague. I just busied myself with school and work and never having to be home. And except at the respectable hour that then it was time to go to bed, and oh, nothing left. I'm really tired. Gotta go like by myself. He came up with a saying like, "Is that sass? Are you sassing me?" And I'm like, "Sass? Like, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean by that?"
California will better facilitate the care of these individuals who they have invited into our country by incentivizing illegal immigration through their designation as sanctuary states. Since the spring, Republican governors in Texas and Arizona have transported several thousand migrants and asylum seekers to New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., all cities with Democratic mayors. Yet, unlike those major cities, these arrivals aren't met with migrant resources and services like immigration courts, where their asylum cases can be heard.
Immigrants who were told that they would be greeted here with a place to stay and with jobs.
Massachusetts State.
By what part of the circus? I still can't find self-sustaining work. I can find menial jobs, but it does not help. And I am not at the classification or the job category of some of my peers. And there's really no excuse for it. I just don't know who to turn my attention to or to ask for help, saying, "Excuse me, but there's something seriously wrong here." And they seem to be playing a lot of circus games and diverting attention, which they seem to be very good at.
Representative Dylan Fernandez arrived on the island Wednesday and called the move by the DeSantis government to transport migrants there with seemingly no coordination, quote, evil.
They're using children as political pawns. But the island community has really rallied together.
In addition to food and shelter, migrants were also tested for COVID and were all negative, we're told. Now, as for Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, who's also a Republican, his office told us the state will continue to support the short-term sheltering service.
So in New York City, we've got COVID, coronavirus, we got BA4, BA5, there's some monkeypox out there right now, there's polio out there right now. I mean, are these people coming up? I mean, are they screened for parasites, for all sorts of things that they might have picked up somewhere else that are now being shipped in and going to defecate in our toilet system, going into the water system? And is the water treatment manager aware of such things? I mean, like, there's a process and a system of, no, we don't just let anybody in for a reason to keep the rest of you your health and safety. I'm a little confused how they're just, this air travel, I mean, this puts a lot of us that can't travel by air in serious risk.
Services provided to those migrants. Now, reporting from Woods Hole, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Nick Giovanni. Tony, back to you in New York.
Nick Giovanni for us from WBZ there, our partners in Massachusetts. A story unlike any I'm sure you or your station's ever covered. Thank you very much. This has not happened in this way before.
Right.
There's been a crisis at the border for multiple decades. Congress, multiple presidents have not solved that crisis. There's been busing to Chicago, to D.C., to New York. The difference here is that Martha's Vineyard is a tiny island of 15,000 people without an ICE court, without an infrastructure that can handle an influx like this, without social services in place,
let alone on late notice.
Yeah, late notice.
Yeah, like no notice.
No notice. So,
yeah, it's just,
ultimately they're probably going to end up in Boston. But it's a change. That's why we call it an escalation off the top. This is a shift in strategy.
I thought the word inhumane was a good one to use in this particular case. The people don't know where they're going. The people that are there don't know you're coming.
Right.
It's good to see, though, that they're being welcomed and that people are trying to help them.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Volunteers.
Exactly. I've been to Martha's Vineyard many times. It's a great, great place. But at least give people some notice so they can prepare.
Yeah, prior to this, best known for where they shot Jaws. But I don't, it's not the end of the story. This is going to continue, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, to the latest on disgraced singer.
Jaws, huh? Great white shark, right? Little baby seal balancing on the nose of this great white shark that I'm trying to... whatever. I mean, that's always like my... kind of, sort of, but not really in a whatever way. Now I go from here to channel Eyewitness News at noon. And straight out of the gate, it's Eyewitness News at noon. Same date. And this is what it looks like.
Mayor Adams says the city is nearing its breaking point. Eyewitness News reporter Janice Yu has more from Hell's Kitchen.
Mayor Eric Adams spent some time touring the center, which is actually inside the American Red Cross building. He stopped and talked to some of the volunteers with the nonprofit organizations that are helping out. Now, asylum seekers can make appointments and come to this center and get help for everything, including health care, as well as navigating the education system, or even legal aid.
Yiddish, Spanish, English.
I have to ask, IHS and CHS, my Catholics and my Episcopalians, in a Viking way of, I heard yesterday, Gemini brought up that there's the NEG blood as opposed to the POS blood. He actually wrote it out in his lyrics. He said one is considered Adam, like a son of Adam, one's a son of Cain. Apparently that's how biblically or historically they've spoken about such thing. So I would be a son of Adam for sure. That's what was on the life-sustaining organ donation that I received just recently. But this is really confusing, and I was delivered here from a natural born birth from my mother. And now I have not in my life frame been given like the level of attention or instruction the way that ICE gives these intruders or vagrants that have found their way here for some reason. They're not announced. There seems to be no information regarding this. They just show up and expect to have health care, food, services, futures built for them here. I was delivered here. And we are like land area managers, the last homeowners association on file. So it is confusing how I was not even given this level of service or attention, and yet they seem to be attending to and servicing other situations, I mean, as far as an emergency room goes, I think that your healthcare workers and your homeowners association workers are like the most important as defense of one's territory and homeland. Why even that was not stepped up, ramped up, enhanced up, I don't know. I mean, how many years are you held captive in the education system? So you're here and you're the representative from the great hall, that from the great beyond, in there's supposed to be some great marriage for some great reason, instead of some Tony Tina hoax way of there was no benefit ever.
It's the newest resource for asylum seekers in New York City, a central location where they can go for help after arriving in the city.
We need to welcome them with compassion, and we're doing it here.
At least 11,000 asylum seekers have come to New York City since May. More than 8,000 are still in the city's shelter system.
I don't see anything from 6 kings or Viking in a Roman numeral 6 kind of a way at vi and viable. I don't see the representatives being shipped in, and I can't really find other homeowners association representatives like myself. And now they're shipping in and they've got mayors that don't even look HOA Viking. So now this gets confusing at ancestors, and there are children here that need to be planned for, that need roles, that need a part. And everything seems to be like really chaotic. And I don't see it getting better. It seems to be getting stepped up increasingly worse.
Mayor Eric Adams says this has put the system at a breaking point, and the city needs to reassess policies in place that help those seeking emergency shelter.
We have not been ashamed to say that we need help. And all those who think we're not getting it.
And where I was at the Episcopalian. Now, I've heard in the past there was some British India company. No idea what their natives look like. What I can tell you is that here, that's what looked like, that's what a woman version showed up with the binder in the Episcopalian church called All Saints inside of Bayside, Queens, saying it was in charge of the archdiocese. I don't see how that's even possible based on the fact of what they're now pronouncing as an ascension of a king. Does not look anything even relatable. So this gets really confusing.
It right.
And hairy.
Show us how to get it right, because we believe we are getting it right.
The news of a possible overhaul to the policies received some backlash from advocacy groups, fearing the mayor was referring to the decades-old right to shelter law. The administration is adamant that's not the case.
It is important, because we don't exist in a vacuum, to reconsider the practices that the city developed that flow from the right to shelter.
On Monday, about 60 asylum seekers were unable to stay in the shelters because they were at capacity. When asked if this was a violation of the right to shelter law, the administration said it understands.
Now, is this mental asylum seekers? Like, seriously, because are they messing with your heads? Have you lost your minds? So is it mental asylum? I mean, is there like an umbrella terminology for this?
What the law entails, and that the men had places to stay in the shelters the next day.
Faced with over 11,000 asylum seekers since May, they've safely and efficiently provided them not just shelter, but all the related services that the consent decree upon which the right to shelter is based guarantees.
The mayor says the city has reached out to the state as well as federal government for help. Now, despite being at capacity, officials are adamant that they will do whatever they can to expand the resources so they can accommodate the influx of migrants. In Hell's Kitchen, Jana Sue, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And in a surprise move, the governor of Florida is taking a page out of Texas Governor Greg Abbott's political playbook when it comes to asylum seekers. This time, Ron DeSantis sent 2 planes filled with migrants to Martha's Vineyard without any warning to local officials. The planes carrying 50 migrants from Venezuela landed yesterday on the small island, Massachusetts. The island community had to scramble to provide shelter and services to families, including children. But despite their sudden arrival, the community banded together to help them and set them up in a nearby church overnight.
Immigrants who were told that they would be greeted here with a place to stay and with jobs.
It's literally all hands on deck of the community. Really beautiful to see the community all coming together to try to help.
Governor DeSantis is defending his actions, saying that he used funding from his state's $12 million approved funding by the legislature for the removal and relocation of undocumented immigrants to fly the group to Martha's Vineyard. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris declined to comment when she was asked if she had any reaction to the migrants who were dropped off in front of her residence at the Naval Observatory this morning. 2 buses arrived carrying between 75 and 100 migrants. They'd been picked up in Eagle Pass, Texas. The group includes migrants from Venezuela, Uruguay, Colombia, and Mexico.
Following breaking news, New York City's Parks Department just rejected a push to cut.
It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.